Previously on Can You Roll a Crit? Considering how accurate I was last time, so, it just makes the conspiracy people think that I have some magic direct line to Games Workshop and they just go like, tell us what you think, John. And they'll go, do X. Because that's not how it happens at all. Oh, hey, James, yes. Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, there's no way that would all happen. Everything I said, come on, that'd be ridiculous. Like, I'm clearly not a playtester. That would, never happen. What do you mean the balance data slate has been updated? What do you mean check the Discord? Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. So, greetings and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team video where I'm going over the balance data slate. Like and subscribe and all of that. Games Workshop updated the balance data slate yesterday. I was at work. Got a lot of interesting messages. So let's go through it today. Before I actually get into the changes, interestingly, you'll see Games Workshop has stopped posting stats for Kill Team. They do post these MetaWatch videos, which is great. I actually like them posting this because they do it for Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40,000. So it shows they really value Kill Team as a game and take it very seriously competitively. The only thing is they don't post any stats anymore. So I can't tell if they're using the stats me and Hot Sauce Teddy make, or they just don't want to talk about stats now, but they show stats for the other game systems. So it's just very weird. But look, there's a new balance data slate with a lot of very interesting changes. Original changes. Let's get into it, right? Let's start off with the balance data slate. Okay, so for the balance data slate, remember, I have done several videos on what I would like to see, but I'm sure they all won't be implemented. But anyway, as you can see, they've changed how they've done updates. Once again, we've got a new formatted balance data slate, which looks great. But what they say is now if it has an asterisk instead of a bullet point, it means it's new. So let's look through all of these. So there has been a change for the critical operations. Each player cannot score more than 16 victory points in total from the mission objective during the battle instead of 12. So effectively, if you're playing capture or secure, you can now score another extra 4 victory points on the primary, which should help with ties. No, this doesn't really do anything for loot, but at least it's something. Currently, rules as written, I think GW forgot they put a cap of 20 victory points on the mission in the crit ops rules. So, but rules as intended, I believe they don't think that. And like in a week or so, we'll probably get an update of the balance data slate saying, and also you can now score a maximum of 24 points when it comes to missions, as Elliot said in the balance data slate video. I know people are getting very upset over this, but it's basically a distinction between rules as written and rules as intended. Rules as intended at the moment, the cap should be 24, rules as written is 20. But I'm really glad to see a lot of people who were very rules as written in the past going with the rules as intended for 24. So, because rules as intended, it's probably a better interpretation than rules as written. But semantics aside, eventually missions are going to have the cap of 24 instead of 20. So this might help with draws, because this is why they've changed it. But if they can change crit ops rules like this, why don't they change so much more? I mean, they said they're not changing Fortify because there's not enough data, but you can't track it. But anyway, this is maybe a good change. I just would have liked something for loot as well. If they added something for loot, that would be great. But yeah, we have a buff for the Orc Commandos. Now, as you said, if you may remember, when I was talking about buffing and nerfing kill teams, I was like, Commandos weren't doing so well, but it's like marginally so. But I still think to give them a valid boost, they should be able to take the bomb squig and a grot instead of a normal boy. Operative selection. If you select a bomb squig, you can select a commando grot for free for 11 operatives instead of 10. This is amazing. Thank you, Games Workshop. I did not even think this would happen. I thought they would just leave commandos alone. This is great. Like, now everyone's going to use the bomb squig. It's just really good. Really good. Really, this is the stuff I like to see. It's not a crazy buff, but I think it's enough of a buff to make the kill team really interesting, because they go up to 11 activations, and even though the bomb squig is stuck on engage, on Into the Dark, this is a straight buff. But even on open, as long as you just deploy the bomb squig visibly hidden. It's a really good change, really good change. Now we have Legionary Changes. So, mutagenic flesh. It's gone from a minimum of 3 damage. Well, it's gone to a minimum of 3 damage instead of 2. So I remember when I was talking about damage negation. So this is what really shocked me. I thought GW would do it as a general rule to help future-proof themselves. They have done it on an individual basis here, and it's really good to see. Like, I am genuinely shocked that they changed this rule individually. I thought it would make it a general rule. I still think Nurgle is the best for Legionary, but it makes Tzeentch a little bit better. It's like Nurgle is still really good, but now that they reduce damage to a minimum of 3 instead of 2, huge change, huge change. Next, we have the Corsair Void Guard. They gain, their Shredder gains rending, like the Hand of the Archon. That's just a straight buff, which makes sense considering otherwise it would just be weird. But good to see, good to see. It's Corsairs are already in a good place, so them just getting a flat buff just for consistency's sake is really good to see, both in general and the fact GW want to be consistent with their rules. So once again, another really good change here. Now we go to Phobos Strike Team. So the new change, so first you've got a Guerrilla the Battle Honor, which is narrative play. You change it to while within engagement range instead of blue, whatever. Biggest change here, add the following to the Vanguard strategic ploy. So this is when you play it, you gain plus black movement and you ignore the first white when you try and traverse or climb. It can perform a mission action or the pickup action for 1 less action point to a minimum of 0. I always said this should have just been a flat rule, but I didn't think GW would add it, but they have in actually a really cool way. Vanguard was already a really good ploy you generally played every turn for the extra mobility, but now it also lets you do mission actions and pickup actions for effectively free. This is so good. Not only does this buff the Phobos Strike Team in terms of doing, you know, certain tac ops and missions on Into the Dark, they are insane now. Like, in terms of action efficiency, this is probably the most efficient action economy team in the game, which is great. So good, right? And I think this is enough of a change, as well as once you see all the other changes, to give them the huge boost they needed. This is amazing. I can only give praises to Games Workshop and just reiterate, I am really not a playtester. Really, I'll keep saying it. Please. Anyway, let's keep going. So unfortunately, there's been no changes for Void Dancer Troupe. The playtesters were too strong, so we couldn't get any nerfs. They were just fine at the current of what was it, nearly 60% win rate for 3 months. It's fine. But the biggest one is Gellerpox Infected. So they got a change, but I think they stole this balanced data slate in terms of they completely slept through the nerfs. So the only thing they changed was, once again, something I suggested, which I didn't think they would do, but Volga Freiskurst's lead the infection ability. So at the start of a turning point, when he's on a different objective he hasn't infected before, you get a free command point. They've limited that to once per battle, which is a really good change. Honestly, really good. And I wasn't expecting GW to do it, because once again, it's like you're changing a core ability of a kill team. Generally, they don't like doing that, but they didn't get anything else. And this kill team has had 3 months of greater than 60%. And when you see future teams as we go on, it's kind of a bit confusing. I would have been okay if the Hulks went down to a 6-up DPR, or you just made, what do you call it, Rust Emanation CP 1+. I guess they think if they limit the CP of the team, it'll knock them down a bit. But I don't know. I think Gellerpox laughed through this update, so they're still super strong, because it just means the good players will just be more canny with their CP usage. So the team is basically unchanged. It is a nerf, but I don't think it's a nerf that will matter in general. Next, we've got the Elucidian Starstriders, who are technically the best performing kill team in the game at the moment. Right, the highest win rate, really high usage, and high podium placements. So the Hierotek beam is now the only support asset that hits on freeze. So the other 2 were reduced to hitting on 4s again, which was fine. Them all hitting on freeze was way too good. Like, they never should have all hit on freeze. That was crazy to begin with, considering you've got a 4 dice blue range attack and then 5 dice. Like, hitting on 4s is fine. The normal lance just hitting on freeze is good because you can only use it twice per game, and I think that's fine. Undaunted Explorers, the first time each friendly Elucidian Starstrider operative fights in combat or a shooting attack is made against it, instead of each time, damage halved to a minimum of 2 rounding up. So I didn't realize, When I first read this, I thought it wasn't much of a change. But then when I looked at it, I realized they now only get it once per turning point instead of every time they are shot or fight. This is crazy. Like, this was the main stratagem making this kill team overperform. And it's the way they've done it is actually a really good nerf, because my change would have just made it to it does a minimum of 3 damage, but the issue is then it basically does nothing against a lot of teams. This is a really neat change. It still keeps the power of this damage negation ploy, but doesn't make it overtuned, because the issue is you ended up with 7 and 8 wound models that would tank way too much damage because it triggered every time they were shot or fought in combat. So this is a good change, really good change. And notably, the rotor cannon lost Relentless. I thought they would give it Ceaseless instead. They've just straight up removed Relentless. So I think maybe that's a little bit too extreme, but we'll see. I think the Elucidian Starstriders are definitely a solid A tier instead of S tier now, but it's very interesting, and it's like weird to see the comparison when you compare them to the Gellerpox Infected, who are arguably just as bad in terms of overperforming, but they just got a light slap, whereas Elucidian Starstriders got slapped back down. But maybe it's because they realized it looked bad that they did a Hunter Clade situation of over buffing them, so reacted appropriately or whatever, but you know, it is what it is. Now we go to the Imperial Navy breaches. So add the following rule to Blitz. If you do either, so either retain a hit or a crit and a hit, you cannot reroll the remaining dice, which is technically a nerf, but it still stacks with close assault, and generally you should statistically gain 1 hit with 2 dice. So if you're within blue of a target, you're still getting all the hits. Kind of I want to say a joke change. It's just a really, really weird change. The fact they still let you retain a crit and a hit for 1 CP is pretty dumb. So it's technically a nerf, but not really a good nerf. Then the Navis Grenadier only has 1 of each grenade. That should have been a thing to begin with. And then Brace for counterattack. Now you reduce the cap of the damage negation to 3 instead of 2. I love you, Games Workshop. I love you so much. This actually is really good, because as I said, you actually don't really need to touch stims once that's in place, because the problem with Brace, it made if you had 3 damage, you would go down to 2 damage, so you needed 4 successful attacks to go through to kill a breacher instead of 3 if it was 3 damage. So this is a huge change, and it probably keeps breachers just in A, because remember, they were only around 58%. So with this change, that might just knock them solidly into the 55 to 45 or even 50 to 55 range. So breachers, they did get hit, but not as hard as people were thinking. So there you go. So Intercession Squad have been changed. So they've changed durable. So originally I thought it said double chapter tactic, and I was like, oh wow. But instead they've changed it, so now it only works on the first crit in the attack sequence. That reduces damage by 1. So durable, each time this operative fights in combat or a shooting attack is made against it, 1 critical hit inflicts 1 less damage to a minimum of 3. So they've added a damage cap, and it only works once per attack sequence. But I don't think this is much of a nerf. The biggest thing is now it has a cap, but you're still like generally fishing for 1 or 2 crits. Remember, you do have transhuman physiology to, if you're in getting shot at, you can turn a normal hit save into a crit save for 1 CP. But it's a nice change. Like, they've obviously done this based on the podium data with the kill team, because it's huge, right? They're the most successful kill team in the game at the moment and the most popular. I like this. It's not a change, I think, that does too much. Obviously, lethal X weapons are gonna love this, but it is good because this is a free update, and it means GW can constantly tweak this as a PDF. So there is no issue here, unless you're printing it off and then upset you have to print off again, which technically I'm in that part, but it's fine. It's good that they're showing that they're not just focusing on win rates. They are, when there's like crazy podium data, which is what I'm assuming they're going off of. This is what they're trying to do. I mean, it probably just locks you into taking rapid and methodical, but I still think rapid and durable is fine. You probably go rapid methodical on Into the Dark now instead of durable methodical. But overall, it's maybe a nerf. I just think it's a change. Like, it's a side grade. It's technically nerfed durable, but not in a detrimental way. And then we get to Hierotek Circle. So these are effectively all new changes. Reanimation Protocol. So resolve before living metal. Operatives who gain D3 plus 3 lost wounds and can instead be placed within blue of that token but not within engagement range. So now you heal D3 plus 3 and then you heal 2 wounds. So you're effectively D3 plus 5. So you're coming back with 8 wounds, so you're basically coming back uninjured. Amazing. Really good. Excellent. Excellent. And then the Plasma Sight Accelerator. It is now 0 action points and it affects anyone within red instead of blue. So their comms works for free with a boosted range. Really good. The Reanimator. The Reanimation Beam doesn't cost 1 APL to do. Amazing. The Cryptek, the Cryptek, Despotek, and Apprentech all get +2 wounds. So now your Apprentech and Despotek are on 12 wounds, and I believe the Cryptek is on 13, which is really good for the team as a whole. And you increased the ballistic skill and weapon skill of the weapons on their data cards by 1. So no longer does it just buff their ballistic skill. Crypteks are now hitting on 3s for melee and combat, as well as Despotek, and the Apprentech, and the Despotek is hitting on 2s. This is crazy. Crazy good, and what the team needed. And anyway, the Cryptek command and Despotek's demand actions are now 0 action points. So Crypteks are effectively 4 APL, potentially 5 APL with the Accelerator. Crazy. Way more action economy from this kill team. Commence Reanimation is unchanged, and Phase Oculars are unchanged, so they're both 0 CP and 0 action points to use, which is interesting. And Crypteks. Change all instances of the end of the turning point and the start of the next turning point to the start of the operative's next activation, if it is incapacitated or if another friendly operative performs this activation, whichever comes first. So what does this mean? It effectively means all Cryptek abilities now trigger until you next activate your Cryptek. So if you activate them first, unless it's incapacitated or you do a different action, whatever, like that effect will last until they activate again next turning point. It's a really crucial change, and I'd need to examine it more, but effectively allows their abilities to function better. Really good. Really good. Like, this team got buffed way more than I thought it would, and it's great. This is what the team should have been on launch, and I'm really glad. I've almost finished painting my Hierotek circle, and I'm so happy. And I'm so happy all the oracles I watched made sure I was right. For the last one, we have Kasrkin. So Kasrkin are now all +1 wounds, as I suggested originally. So they all go to 8 wounds with 9 on the leader. And in each strategic phase, you get 2 elite points. So if your leader's alive, you're getting 4 per turning point. And you will get the combat blade for 1 equipment point. So it's 3 attacks, 4s, 3/4. Probably too cheap at 1 equipment point, but it gives the team some melee functionality. And this is all great. I know there's like demented people going, they should be ballistic skill free and have elite points because I just want it. But this is actually a much better way. I suggested in the videos either hitting on 3s, but then I realized that was too good unless they reworked elite points, or just making them all +1 wound because they are bigger than normal guardsmen and they are when carapace armor. Having them just more durable is perfect. And now they have more elite points and they have some combat punch. Really nice change. Probably won't break them, but this is good. Really good. So now we come into all the FAQs. So this is, well, all the erratas, right? So let's just go for it. So when it comes to the core rules, remember, we're looking for asterisks. So let's go searching for updates. So for Killzone Octarius, for the scramble over and charge over, this operative cannot move over any other terrain features during this move. This actually stops scramble dash. So what people are doing, putting scramble pieces next to doors, and so you could scramble and then go through the door. So you actually can't do this anymore. So interesting. I guess that's what they were trying to show, like this wasn't an intended interaction, because it's what a lot of the London setups do. Like they'll put a scramble piece next to a door because they use doors on Octarius. So you actually can't do this. So if you actually put the scramble piece next to a door, you've now blocked off the door, which is interesting. It's a very interesting change. For Hatchway Fight, in all steps of that combat, the enemy operative is treated as being within engagement range of that active operative. So this is actually a really important change because it means, remember when you're hatchway fighting, you don't technically count as being in engagement range if they're not within engagement range. Now you always do, and this is a buff to a lot of niche scenarios. So like certain equipment and stuff like the ones I can think of is like the Blooded -1 attack in engagement range. That is now affected by this, but also the Crimson Duelist when the double fight, because they have to end their fight within engagement range. But I think that still clashes with the rule for hatchway fighting because you can't be in engagement range. But I guess this overrules it because you count as being you count as being within engagement range, so now the Crimson Duelist can double hatchway fight. So nice change here. So for our next question, in rare instances, can operative gain a special rule critical hit rule more than once, and can both be used? E.g. a Pistoliers from the Kroots, Pistols, and the Prey strategic ploy. Both provide balance. No, the operative only benefits from the same rule once. If the X is different, choose which to use. So if you have Mortal Wounds 1 and Mortal Wounds 2, you choose which one you wouldn't be Mortal Wounds 3. So some nice clarification there, because I guess people were like, do I get double balanced? If an operative can perform a free action, but any other rules require an additional action points to be subtracted to perform such action takes precedence. For example, Light Fingers from Corsairs and Terror. The former, it's still free. So if you say you do it for free, you ignore all modifiers, which is a general rule as we see going forward. As you cannot use an operative's abilities when it's incapacitated, what happens when it's affected by a rule that states it isn't removed from the kill zone yet, e.g. Death and Atonement? In this instance, you can use its abilities until it's removed from the kill zone. In Death Atonement, you basically stay on the board. So while you're still on the board, you still have your abilities until you're immediately removed. So just some more cleaning up of rules interactions. And then for close quarters, when using the guard action, if I interrupt an enemy operative's activation and perform an Overwatch action, can I target a different enemy operative? Yes. So this is still weird, because I remember asking Elliot this, the lead developer, when I was in the December Warhammer World Tournament. And he's like, that was intended. And I was like, well, I thought so. It's just a weird interaction. And I guess it kind of makes sense. At least they're sticking with it. Like, I still find it weird, but at least now everyone knows it's legal, because you would do it in tournaments and stuff and games, and people would go, that's not right. And it's like, I'm afraid it's rules as written, and then people go like, ugh. But now at least it's clarified to end these arguments. So another good clarification there. For the Elucidian Starstriders, for the purposes of the Canid operative's retrieve unique action, can you determine control of an objective marker token during the move action in order to perform the pickup action? Yes. I won't get too much into this apart from internet drama, but people arguing you couldn't pick up during this kind of move. And for close quarters, does the condensed environment rule infect the privateer support assets? Yes, in all these instances. So you can still blast people into the dark, and they all gain lethal 5+ if they're blasts, which is weird. No explosive decompression for everyone. At least they clarified it. And then for the Farstalker kin band, they had the same errata / rules clarification for the Kroot Hound, so they can pick up and determine control during their gather, which is good. More clarity, just nice to see. The Gellerpox is Spanish, and yeah, it's also the Kroot one. So we actually don't know what's happened to the Gellerpox infected, but I don't expect much to change. So at the moment, you know, I'll review it at a later date, but so far, not much of a change here. So plasmacytes can now fall back to a minimum for 1 AP less to a minimum 1, which is nice. A nice cool change there. And then when a friendly Hierotek circle operative is successfully reanimated, does it still have the rules, modifiers, and or additional tokens before it's incapacitated? For example, the invulnerable save from the Time Splinter and unique modifiers such as marker light tokens. Yes. An important interaction. They don't just disappear when they die. So if you got blown up with 5 marker light tokens, you come back to life, you still have 5 marker light tokens. Which is interesting. Well, you would lose 1, but for example, everything just sticks. So there is still some downside to coming back. It's not just you come back at effectively full health. So good rules there. For Imperial Navy breaches, when making a shooting attack with the Void Jammer's Geist Skull detonator against each enemy operative, each operative within white of a friendly Geist Skull, can these operatives be in cover? No, because this is effectively a blast attack, and you know, for their rules language, they say blast effectively you don't get cover from because it's occurring within 2 inches. So some more nice clarity there. So when resolving the unending bloodshed tactical deploy, can I use the Raffle Onslaught ability of Khorne to strike with the normal hit as if it were a crit? No. So it kind of tones down the interaction there, but it's fine. They did it for rules purposes. I mean, it would have made Khorne better to take, but I'm I'm more of the mindset you should stick to the rules instead of allowing weird rules interactions to buffer underperforming part of a team. So this is fair, because if you weren't aware, unending bloodshed is when a Khorne operative dies, you can strike with a normal hit before you die. So the Khorne ability is if your first strike, if it's a strike, you turn it into a crit. So just, a slight Khorne nerf there. So for Novitiates, if guilt reveals itself, Exaction Squad interacts with the blinding aura of Acts of Faith, which takes precedence. So guilt reveals itself, which basically means you don't count as being in cover if you're within 2 white, so 4 inches. So the Emperor protects, except against the law. And then for close quarters, when using Defenders of Faith strategic ploy in the close quarters, can a friendly Novitiate operative perform a guard action instead of a shoot action, as it's treated as a shoot action? So yes. So this is actually a hella crazy buff, because Defenders of the Faith if you're at the start of the fight phase, if you're within white of the center of each objective marker, you can do a free shoot action or free fight action. So let's say you're going second and you're behind doors on objectives, you can now just put a ton of people on guard. This is very huge, and it is 2 CP, but this is a crazy buff, and I don't even know where this came from, but it allows you to effectively shut down rooms when you lose initiative, even when you don't lose initiative. So Novitiate's really scaring into the dark now. So for Veteran Guardsmen, does the condensed environment rule of close quarters affect tactical assets? Yes, in all instances. So all your blast assets go to lethal 5-up. So that's nice. Still doesn't explain how they work. Let's just ignore thematics. It's a good buff there. So for Void Dancer Troupe, they've errated. You cannot add marks to your performance tally as a result of Gellerpox infected mutoid vermin operatives. For example, forming a fallback action while within engagement range of only mutoid vermin operatives does not complete a comedy performance. Because this is, once again, this is why when I went up to Elia at the Warhammer World December tournament, I was like, technically for the grand tally, for like scoring your tally, it doesn't count. But for your grand act, it does. And he was like, technically yes, but it shouldn't. But currently it does. So this is some nice clarification there. Although you can oddly farm them for your SADEF points without TAC ops, but it's just weird. But there's a good clarification here. And then there are no other changes. So technically a slight nerf in an already bad matchup for the Harlequins, Void Dancer Troupe. So for the Warp Coven, change the last sentence of the schemes of change tactical ploy. Discard one of your TAC ops and any points you've scored from it, and select a new TAC op from those remain in your chosen archetype or a faction TAC op, unless you have another faction TAC op in use. So it does make this tactical ploy slightly more usable, although you probably really shouldn't use it in general. Now you can pick TAC ops. If you could pick a different archetype, that'd be good. But as you can't, it's just functional now. So then for the Exaction Squad, for the Castigator, add the following bracket to this part of the sentence, including all modifiers to the weapons it's equipped with, but excluding the defense characteristic, because technically it could ignore AP. So the only thing he can't ignore is AP, which is fine. It's just a shame. I liked him tanking melters with his chest, the toughest chest of the lore, but now he can't, but that's fine. And then they also get, for Kill Team Soul Shackle, if guilt reveals itself, that's the same as the Novitiate FAQs, so that's fine. Can I use engendered focus ability to ignore modifiers of the damage inflicted by a friendly castigator operative? For example, if I strike a legionary operative benefiting from mutagenic flesh, strategic ploy with its execution of all, will it inflict the full 4 damage? Yes, this is huge. So it basically means when he attacks stuff, he ignores all sorts of damage negation. So he doesn't ignore, like, if you have a DPR, but as it's shown here, if you had some way to negate damage, his attacks just go, I don't believe in your damage negation, which is good. And then for Hand of the Archon, so they've changed how the Torment Grenade works quite a bit. So add the following: this operative cannot perform this action while in engagement range, so you can't charge and then grenade. And then it changes, so instead of doing damage at the end of the turning point, you now do damage at the first, at the start of a turning point, which means instead of killing someone by 7 wound operative, if you poison them turning point 2, they're going to be alive at the end of the game. So it's a slight nerf in terms of prolonged damage over time. And the effects of poison remained even if you're incapacitated, because this poison lasts. And then for the Elixicant, they can't do their drug while within engagement range, you know, they're healing and stuff, which makes sense. Then for the FAQs, if an operative is incapacitated as a result of being poisoned by the Torment Grenade, does the Disciple of Yelendra get a pain token? Yes, as long as she's alive, which fits in with the rules. When using from Darkness Death, do you select the enemy operative before, determine your friendly operative's order, or after? Before, so, you know, it makes that ploy even better. When making a shooting attack with Disciple of Yelendra's Stinger Pistol, at what point do you determine the mortal wounds? After all the rerolls, if any. Because I asked this, because it's like, technically, if you rolled a 1, you could do 3 more wounds, then reroll that into another 1 and do 3 more wounds, because it's not clear at all. So this is a good clarification, all of that. And then for Fleet of Foot, what does vice versa mean? You can perform the actions in either order, normal move or fall back and a free dash, or a free dash and then a normal move but not a fall back in this order, as the operative wouldn't be within engagement range. So it was confusing because they used like Oxford English, which is confusing in itself, but it's a nice clarification here because people were making crazy assumptions about this ruling, really weird, like just people going too far. And then if my opponent can use a strategic ploy for free, but I use a devious scheme, which takes precedence. It's free no matter what. So that matches into other stuff they previously established, as I shown earlier in the video. So it's nice just to have this continuity of rulings, you know? And then when it comes to the rest of the teams, no more Erratas. So that's it for Erratas and FAQs. So overall, this is a really good balanced data slate. Went with a lot of my changes, unexpectedly so, and it does keep happening. And I will say again, I am not a playtester, but I have all this power. No, please. People were like, oh, I was even talking to someone yesterday and they were like, where are you at work? I was like, I am at work today. It's like, at work in Nottingham, wink wink. And I was like, I'm in hospital? But it's funny, right? I didn't think they would go this far in terms of balance. It's really good to see. I am very happy with this balanced data slate. It does change a lot. Biggest winners are Hierotek Circle, Phobos, and I will say Gellerpox, because Gellerpox, you know, basically got a small slap on the wrist. And also Kasrkin. Kasrkin are really interesting now, and it's the kind of change I'd like to see. They're really solid changes and big changes in a good way. You know, Elucidian Starstriders were nerfed appropriately, I would say. It's a shame Void Dancer Troops didn't get any hits. And I love the change to damage negation as a whole. Breaches are still quite a threat. You can't underestimate them. And then Intercession Squad have been slightly changed. But the reason I'm happy there is an Intercession Squad change is it shows that GW aren't just focusing on the win rate. Because there is some perplexing group of like people who are seemingly obsessed with the win rates in terms of, even when I do the stats, they're like, you're just talking about win rates. It's like, actually, I'm talking about win rates, podiums, and popularity. And, you know, technically you should nerf Intercession Squad based on their podium data, not their win rate. Even though people are perpetuating this myth that I'm only focusing on win rates, or generally everyone is, and that stat shouldn't be trusted. But that's a whole other subject for just people's insecurities and madness, like mad, you know. And shout outs to Kommandos. I didn't even expect that would happen, so I'm really happy there. I'm glad Blooded didn't get hit. You know, a lot of people got really upset when I suggested that, but I was like, technically based off on the stats, they probably need it, but I'm fine they didn't, so that's good. And all really good changes and lots of really good clarifications. Once again, I'll put the email for the FAQ in the episode description, because I send off a lot of emails about questions, and a lot of them popped up again, and they pop up every video. And it's not to go, oh look, they're paying attention to me. It shows they are listening to FAQs and what the community say. Because I see a lot of people go like, oh, GW don't care what people think. And I'm like, if you send it to them and you actually contact them, they will listen to feedback and change stuff, or they'll clarify it to make it clearer. And even stuff they missed, if it's rules as written and then they feel the rule is fine, then they'll just follow the rule because they clearly missed it. So like, really good balanced data slate, really good presentation, everything's really good. The only thing I miss is just them showing their stats. Like, what's up with that? But apart from that, really good. And yeah, I rate this 10 out of 10 for crits. Really good. That's pretty much it from me today. Please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of this balanced data slate. Did you like all the changes, all of that? And how do you think of the, clarifications and buffs and nerfs? But remember, I've got a Discord you can check out in the episode description below, as well as a affiliate link at Element Games if you want to give me some more support, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. So I'll quickly shout out my patrons. So for my Adepts of the Crit, I have Screech, Sam, Robin, Nick, Kenzie, John Thomas, Eric, Captain Murder, Daniel, Dad of Goldens, Average Joe 27, Arthur, and then for my Veterans of the Crit, I have Sam. Just so thank you so much. Your support really means a lot to me and helps support the channel so much. But yeah, this is it. Like, I'm recording this at 10 a.m. I did a lot of drinking last night, and I'm fine. So if I can do that, anything's possible. But, this is a long video. I'm going to cut it down. I wanted it to be shorter, but the Erratas kind of pushed it over. But I like going through everything. So, it's longer than normal, but it will cover all the changes in case you missed it. So hopefully this is fun. And the intro is going to be fun. So I hope people don't get upset at the intro. Some people, it's really weird online, Some people can't take a joke or take it too seriously, but it's fine. This is an impromptu video, so I hope you enjoyed. Yesterday was wild. But anyway, until next time, no matter what the balanced data slate may bring, remember, there's always hope for Kill Team and your faction, as long as you can roll a crit.